Welcome to the Shema podcast series, The Power of the Hebrew Months with Rabbi Pill. Each month of the Jewish year carries its own unique energy, a spiritual rhythm woven into creation itself. Our sages teach that the months are not just markers of time, but windows of opportunity, each with its own avoda and pathway for growth. In this monthly series, Rabbi Pill and I will guide you into the flow of sacred time. Together, we'll uncover the spiritual work, the inner energy, and the actions you can take to stay in sync with the month. Tools to lift you to new levels of awareness and growth. Think of it as your spiritual workout routine written into the Torah's calendar. Month by month, we'll train the soul, awaken new strengths, and live more fully in harmony with Hashem's design for time. Join us as we journey through the Hebrew months and discover how to channel the energy of time into lasting personal transformation. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Shema podcast. Another installment on the series, The Power of the Hebrew Months with Rabbi Pill. And we are going to be exploring the significant wisdom of the month of Iyar. Rabbi Pill, thank you once again for being here.
Thank you, Dan.
At first glance, you would think, I would have thought years ago, that Iyar was like a flyover month as well. Like nothing going on here, a pit stop for Lag BaOmer. And I think the place I would like to start first is to go back and recap Nisan.
So yeah, that is the right place to start. I just mentioned that, there's a little bit of parallel in a sense between Iyar and Cheshvan because each one follows Nisan and Tishrei, which are both the two beginnings of our different metrics of calendrical year. And so in order to understand Cheshvan, back when we talked about that, you really have to understand Tishrei because one follows on the other, and the same is true over here. So it does make sense to go back a little bit. Especially, I think we'll have opportunity to talk a little bit. Iyar is really a bridge between Pesach and Shavuos, between Nisan and Sivan. And really, if that function is just bridging and connecting the two to each other, we have to know where we're coming from in order to figure out how we're going to get to the next stop. So we talked about last time, Nisan is really all about what we called Isarusa de la Ela, right? An awakening, an energizing awakening that comes from above. Pesach is this moment, especially the first night of Pesach, is this moment where you have a Jewish people who don't deserve to be brought out of Egypt. They've done nothing to earn it. They haven't sort of cultivated a perspective where they can appreciate God's hand in everything. On the contrary, as a result of their slavery in Egypt, they really can't think with any kind of expanded mind to be able to imagine any other reality other than the bad one that they find themselves in. And suddenly, flash of lightning, God comes, as we read in the Haggadah, lo al yedei malach, lo al yedei shaliach, not through an angel, not through any kind of messenger, not through sort of other forces. It was the hand of God itself, so to speak, where everyone could see exactly what was going on, as it says, when the Jews crossed the Red Sea, crossed the Yam Suf, right? Zeh keli v'anvehu, they say, this is my God, and I will beautify him. And Rashi says, right, Zeh keli v'anvehu, that everybody is saying, this is my God, so to speak. They could point their finger and literally tangibly appreciate, this is it. There's something that they're able to see and they're able to appreciate and able to internalize that happens during Nisan, during Pesach, that is miraculous and really happens without it being earned. There are different ways to appreciate God's hand in things. We can work at it, and we do work at it, and we constantly try to appreciate this was God, and that was God, and something else was God. I was listening to your Bal HaSulam podcast from the other day, and really so important that there's the backwards way of thinking, of looking back from where I am now and saying, oh, all of those things lined up the way they were supposed to, and it was all God the whole time, but I can only see it now because now things are good. And then there's the other way of thinking, which in the moment, as things are, whatever they are, positive, negative, difficult, not easy, whatever it is, this is all God. And you can see it as it's happening. And then really, in Nisan, through Pesach, we're getting that sort of present appreciation of this is God, Zeh Keli Vanveu. I see it in front of me, but without having to do all of the training in bitachon and emuna and, reciting brachos on the food that we eat and doing mitzvos mindfully and being present to every moment and what's going on around me in a way that connects the thing that I'm experiencing with some aspect of the divine will that's animating that reality. That's hard work. We couldn't do that hard work before we left Egypt. We couldn't even imagine what hard work like that looks like. We had no concept. And so it comes as a freebie, right? Isarusa de la'ela. It just comes, it just pours down from heaven, so to speak. God ripped everything open and said, here I am. We didn't rip it open. We didn't gradually pull away the veil. God pulled away the veil and said, here is me, right? And that's the experience. That was the experience of Nisan. This is why Nisan is a time of spiritual renewal, of rebirth, because that rebirth is sort of miraculous, right? A baby born has done nothing to deserve life. We talked about this last month. And nevertheless, here their life is handed to them on a silver platter. However, that can't be the way we live all the time. It shouldn't be the way we live all the time. The purpose of creation, the purpose of our role within this world is for us to earn and work at that realization, not to get it for free, to actually earn it and work hard to see it. We've talked about this a few times, and we've talked about this in other contexts, that if the whole goal of everything is for a good God to offer us goodness, and the ultimate goodness is for us to appreciate godliness and God's presence, and really how everything and everyone and is all just part of the same divine, then the best way to appreciate that is to come to that realization on our own, right? When you have that light bulb, aha moment, you work and you work and you work and you've gone through all the difficulties and the challenges. And right, we see this if we try to learn a new subject, if we're trying to understand something, and we try and we try and we try, and when the light bulb goes on, that's a profoundly sublime experience. When the light bulb turns on, we know, we see, we understand. If we understand it right away, that's also good because we understand it, but we never have that light bulb experience. And the ultimate good is to receive the ultimate goodness of our recognition and realization of God's presence with that aha moment. And so to speak, Pesach robbed us of that aha moment, right? Because we didn't earn it. We never appreciated what we had. It was just the way things are. One day we're slaves, the next day we're free. How did we get from one to the other? Just poof, our reality changed. And nothing, we didn't work towards it. We didn't struggle towards it. There's no light bulb aha moment. And that's a shame in a certain sense. It had to happen that way for a variety of different reasons. Because if we didn't get out then, if we were stuck in slavery even longer, we could never have worked towards the aha moment. One thing to sort of see the goal and say, that's very far, I can't do that, right? But at least I can see it. And so if I can't do it today, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, and maybe I'll do it the next day, or maybe if you build me up a little bit, I'll be able to start doing it. But if I'm so far removed from everything and so besotten by my own problems that I can't even see that there's anything else impossible, I can't conceptualize that there's any other way to live, or there's any other way to see things, or there's any other reality or truth behind the life that I'm currently living. So then we have nothing to work with. And we were at that point, right? We were on the cusp of reaching that sort of deep despair. So the only way to get us out is people like that can't work towards it, right? And so, and if God wants us to eventually be able to work towards it, God decides, I'm going to give you this flash of unearned insight into me. But I don't want to leave you with that flash of unearned insight, because that would defeat the opportunity for you having that sublime aha moment. And I want you to have that. So immediately after Pesach, and the Arizal and the Kabbalists and others in other language describe how immediately after the initial exodus from Egypt, everything goes downhill, right? That aha moment is withdrawn. And now we end up back in a space of, I don't see it, right? This is why immediately after they leave Egypt, they start wandering around in different directions throughout the desert, right? And then they end up at the Sea of Reeds, at the Yam Suf, and they despair. And why did you take us out? And we're going to die here. We could have died there. Like, at least there, at least there we were home. And now we're just going to die in the middle of the desert in fear and so on and so forth. That was a good reality. And then you take us out, and just to kill us here on the shores of the sea. they sink back into this sort of, stunted thinking, this katnas hamochin, this constricted poverty mindset of there is no possibility of anything better. And then from there, the whole process of moving from Pesach to Shavuos, when we receive the Torah, which is when the real work begins, is a process of needing to build ourselves up on our own in order to be able to receive the Torah.
So you were just describing the mindset of really low self-esteem, I think, to a degree. But one of the things that couples with Nissan is that Hashem knows is necessary is when you receive something from above as well, is this idea of humility, of eating the matzah, which is, medicinal in helping us, achieve that humility. Because this is so key to everything we're going to be discussing and experiencing between even now through Shavuos, through the month of Iyar, as we do the counting of the Omer. But delineate, if you will, and draw just real clarity between humility and having this low self-esteem or would you characterize it that way, as low self-esteem when they were at the sea and complaining, or is it just lack of trust? Or
I don't think I would call it low self-esteem exactly. I think I would call lack of trust or lack of vision, maybe, right? It's not that they think poorly of themselves. It's not even that in Egypt they have this low self-esteem, I think, although they probably, they do. And it could be that this lack of vision is rooted in more deeply in a lack of self-esteem. But ultimately what it comes down to is I look around me, and the way the world is around me, that's just the way it is. I'm stuck. I'm stuck in this reality. The sea is in front of me. The Egyptian army is coming up behind me, and those are the two options.
You can't see any other possibilities.
There's no other possibilities. Exactly so. There's no other possibilities, right? We're slaves. We've always been slaves. We've been slaves for generations. We're always going to be slaves. There is no other reality other than slavery.
Which is where I think I was going with the idea of there's a root to that in low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Being able to see greater possibilities, growing, changing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's more deeply rooted. If we're going to diagnose it even more deeply, I think, right, that it ultimately does go down to a sense of low self-esteem. If you have a sufficient sense of self-esteem, either you believe you can change your circumstances, or you can transcend your circumstances, even if your circumstances don't change, because I am not my circumstances, and I'm not defined by those circumstances. But in any case, right? So this flash of inspiration, this flash of mochin, of isarusa de le'ela that happens on Pesach, this massive, unprompted and unearned revelation of the divine that happens on Pesach is, of course, humility-inducing. There's a difference, of course, between humility and low self-esteem, and it's a critical difference that unfortunately is too often confused with each other, right? The humble person, Moshe is the most humble person ever, the Torah says. Moshe does not have low self-esteem. Can't be. On the contrary, the rabbis talk about how a Navi, a prophet, can't receive prophecy in a state of depression and low self-esteem, etc. It's just not possible. That is not a state conducive to communing with the ultimate and communicating with the ultimate. If you're nothing, then you can't commune with everything. It's incompatible. Humility, rather, and this is what's represented by the matzah, I think, and is sort of the consequence of the unearned revelation that happens through the Exodus, is a sense of I'm not nothing, I'm actually everything, but because I'm everything, I'm not anything other than everything. And right, I am purely just I'm part of the big picture, because you see the big picture. So the humility here is there's no ego. I am the most important thing in the world, but it's not that there's an I different from you and different from the next person and different from the next person, right? Haughtiness, ego, unhealthy self-esteem is relative to others. I am more important than you are, right? I have to hold myself up here while you have to be down there, because we place ourselves on a hierarchy. But when I am just part of the everything, and I see myself as part of the everything, or to use more Kabbalistic language, when I view myself purely as a kli is a real thing, a vessel. I'm a vessel, I'm a vehicle for the revelation of God into the world. A vehicle for the revelation of God into the world exists. It's a real thing, and it's the most important thing in the world. But that's what I am. I'm a tool. I'm a tool, not in a negative sense. I'm a tool for the revelation of God. I'm a vehicle for the revelation of God, and I'm just a conduit for that. I'm a pipeline. I'm a tzinor for the light of God to be expressed into the world. How is infinite light expressed into a physical world? Through physical things. I am that physical thing that's expressing godliness into the world. That's humility. It makes me into the most important thing in the world, but I am just part of the divine plan. So there's no independent me, so to speak.
That's such a key idea that we're going to be building on. When you get something free from above, it created the risk of us becoming arrogant. And so Hashem's saying, eat the matzah, become humble. And as we go through the month of Iyar and we sort of go through the counting of the Omer, we're going through this process of really instilling that into ourselves so we can actually experience Shavuos and receiving the Torah.
Yeah, I think there's another also important aspect to this, which is if after we receive that unearned flash, we then have to earn it, there's always a danger that goes along with earning the light bulb moment, which is you think that it's you. There's an arrogance that can come, there's an ego, there's an arrogance that can come along with I did it, because then it's about you did it. Many of the early Hasidim talk about this specifically in connection to Torah study. One of the early debates between the Hasidim and the Mitznagdim, between those who supported the new Hasidic movement of the Baal Shem Tov and those who were opposed to it, was the issue of the emphasis or de-emphasis of Torah study. And one of the positions taken by the early Hasidim was that Torah study is of the utmost importance, but understand that from the perspective of spiritual development, there's a serious danger that inheres in Torah study, which is the danger of arrogance. When you study Torah and you spend hours and hours and days and years and so on and so forth becoming a great Torah scholar, you can and inevitably will view yourself as accomplished. I have studied Torah. I walked in understanding nothing, and I worked really, really hard, and I sat in the class even though I felt like an idiot because I understood nothing, and I sat there day after day after day, and drip, 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 drip. The Torah finally made an impression on me, and I began to understand, and I could read a few words, and now I could read more words, and then I can start, running through the Talmud, and I learned the whole, and now I'm a Torah scholar because I worked so hard. Because Torah only comes with hard work. And that's important. Torah only comes with hard work. The Torah that we get easy, for us, that's not my Torah, right? That my Torah, the Torah that is my chelek, my portion, my path in Torah, the Torah that only I can really connect to and need to bring out, it only comes with difficulty, it only comes with challenge, it only comes with hard work, because the hard work is itself the currency of Torah. But the fact that Torah comes with hard work means that we can walk away with it with a sense of arrogance. I'm a Torah scholar. I have studied. I have worked hard. And there's a danger of that because you forget where it's coming from. It's not coming from you. And no matter how hard you worked, we're not in control of the outcomes. We're not in control of the results. You can work as hard as you want. And we do this all the time. We can sit and work and work and work at trying to understand something in Torah and walk away with nothing. And then other times we walk and work and work and work, and suddenly we understand it. And where did the difference come from? It came from God. But there's a risk. And so in anything that we do the hard work, and that's what Iyar is about. Iyar is about the hard work of integrating the consciousness, the inspiration, the awareness that came for free in Nisan, now integrating it through work, through Tikkun Hamidot, through working on ourselves in order to prepare ourselves to receive the Torah on Shavuos, which then ushers in a whole lifetime and world history of work. We have to make sure that work is not going to be arrogant work, or we're in the background of that work, that all that work is going to be done in the context of humility. And so we eat matzah, and we begin that work only from a place of unearned inspiration, so that it's a freebie, and you remember all the work I'm doing is all in the context. Why am I doing any of this work? Well, I couldn't do any of it when I was in Egypt, because I couldn't even conceptualize that there's such a thing as working on myself and towards this goal and so on. The only reason why I'm working at any of this is because I got that free inspiration from God. And that means all of this is taking place in a context of utmost, or should be taking place in a context of utmost humility.
So the goal now in this month is to take that inspiration, as you just point out, and internalize it. And the letter that for the month of Iyar is the Vav, which is all about connecting opposites, connecting points in time, past and present. Speak to that, because I think that will help clarify a lot on what this process and what this month is really all about and what we're supposed to get from it.
Yeah. Okay. So as we've spoken many times before, right, the Sefer Yetzirah associates the energy of a month. The energy that creates the month also creates other things, right? So in order to understand the month, we can also look at the other thing that's animated by that same energy. And one of those things that's animated by the energy, the power that creates the month of Iyar, the character of the month of Iyar, is the letter Vav. And the letter Vav is associated in many ways with connecting things, bridging things, being the conduit through which things move from point A to point B. And that's so in a number of different senses. Number one, linguistically and grammatically, the letter Vav is a conjunctive and, right? When you put a Vav in front of a word, it means and. This and that. It connects things to each other, right? Before there was me here and you there, but when I put a Vav in between, now there's me and you, right? Now there's a relationship. The two relate to each other in some way, in some way, shape, or form, whereas previously they were totally disconnected from each other. The letter Vav also, which is drawn as a straight line, pictorially, the Arizal describes this, how letters, we can understand letters in various ways. We can understand them in terms of their linguistic function. We can understand also the function or the meaning of a letter, the significance of a letter, the energy that a letter carries in terms of its pictorial form. The way a letter is written, the form that it takes is also significant, teaches us something. Nothing doesn't teach us it's something, right? Everything is teaching us something. So the way the letter is formed also tells us something about the letter. And a letter Vav is just a straight line, vertical straight line. It's a pipe, right? It looks like a pipe, a vertical pipe connecting above and below, from the bottom to the top of a line. That's a Vav. And so that too is the Vav functioning in sort of this bridging function, or this connective function, this pipeline sort of function. The letter Vav is also associated with the Sphira of Tiferes. Tiferes, in the scheme of Spheros, is sort of the middle Sphira of all of the 7 lower spheres, or the 6 lower spheres, depending on how you count them. It doesn't really matter for our purposes, but it's the middle Sphira through which all of the other spheres sort of run and are connected to in order to then produce something out of them. So it's the conduit through which consciousness, the flash of inspiration, Nisan, flows in order to then arrive at Malchus, the lowest sphera, which is the translation of my thoughts into a tangible, externalized reality. How does that happen? That happens through my thoughts being filtered through my emotions and my will and my actions and my preparation, and finally, ultimately, expressing itself into a reality outside of myself through those 6 spheres. So again, the Vav, which is connected to the 6 spheres, it is connected to those 6 spheres also in terms of the 4 letters of the name of God, Yod and Hey and Vav and Hey. It's connected to those middle 6 spheres. It is there too functioning sort of as a conduit, as a bridge between the mind and the externalization of action.
Is there an idea too that to internalize that mankind is a Vav? What we are really is a pipeline, and from a deeply spiritual being to a physical being, and we're sort of working through this process of bringing Yisrael into Yokov through the same process.
Yes.
I mean, we're, like you just said, we're taking these ideas of Torah and we're working through the month of Iyar to refine our midos in order to bring those ideas out into the world, to reflect those ideas through our unique prism and perspective.
Right. The Arizal writes about sort of, it conceptualizes sort of the hierarchy of different creations within reality, that the human being ultimately is the bridge is the bridge between the divine and the physical world, the created world, created beings. We're a little bit of both. On the one hand, we have this godly soul, which is otherworldly and intangible and non-physical and not even really created in a certain sense, because it partakes of the eternal reality of God rather than a created reality that has a beginning and has an end. On the other hand, that soul is enmeshed within and enclosed within a physical body, and somehow, uniquely among everything else that exists, at least from our perspective, the human being is supposed to at least be able to combine those two together seamlessly and figure out how the divine soul can express itself within a physical body without tension. We live our whole lives in tension between those two things. There's the impermanence of and neediness of our physical reality, on the one hand, drawing us in one direction, and the eternality and perfection and godliness of our soul pulling us in another direction. And our whole life is about really working to integrate those two things together. If we're able to do that, which is really, again, the work of Iyar and the work of Sfiras HaOmer, which is Tikkun Amit, which is fixing ourselves, developing ourselves into a proper conduit for this revelation of godliness. If we do that work, then we become a bridge between the divine and the physical, which is the goal of everything anyway, right? To bring the intangible spirituality of the divine here into the physical world, so that we can appreciate that there's no difference between the physical world and the divine world, or physical reality and spiritual reality. They're actually just the same thing. It just depends on perspective. And so our job is to be the conduit, the vehicle, the vav, the pipeline through which that happens.
The vav, the gematria 6, which of course equates with the 6 Sephiros, which we're working on.
Right, precisely so. Right, so the vav is a collective of, is the number 6, but it's six. It's 6 ones basically in one number, right? That's there's a significance to that, right? Because it's integrating. It's an attempt to integrate all of those into one letter, right? It's one representative letter is taking 6 ones, 6 spheros, and putting them all together into one. So it's bridging and synthesizing all of them into one thing. And so and the work of Iyar really is exactly that sort of synthesis. If we think of it in terms of the process of Sfiras HaOmer, and this is a broader conversation than just Sfiras HaOmer, so I don't want to dominate it with that, but the process of Sfiras HaOmer itself is a process of integration, of moving from disunity to greater unity, as we come closer and closer to receiving the Torah, right? Because we have 7 weeks of Sfira, and each week of Sfira is dedicated to one of the 7 lower Sfiros, which is sort of the embodied aspects of our of divine qualities, of Sfiros, of characteristics that we're supposed to be working on week by week. Sfira as a whole is an entity. So it integrates all of them, but within each of them, within each week, we have 7 days, and so each Sfira itself is a process of the work on each sphere itself during 1 week is a process of integrating that sphere in a way that it becomes connected to all of the others. Because during the week of Chesed, for example, we're working on each aspect of Chesed that corresponds to each of the other spheros. Chesed of Chesed, Gevura of Chesed, Tiferes of Chesed, and on. And so the whole process of Sfira is this process of integration corresponding to, again, the Vav, which is integrating all of the 6 individuals into one letter.
The WhatsApp group you created to share your daily teachings on the Sephiros and the lessons and the contemplations and the exercises has been the best I've ever have studied before, as far as really sort of internalizing these lessons every day. I think are brilliant. And with your permission, I would love to be able to post a link in the show notes to this podcast for anyone listening to be able to sign up for that.
I appreciate it, and for sure, of course. Okay. I'm only happy for people to have access to it.
And of course, what we're doing in this month of Iyar is, during the Avav and a bridge, is we are bridging Pesach and Shavuos, inspiration and Torah. What's another way of sort of stating that? We get the inspiration, but then we're working and building ourselves to then receive Torah, which is also coming from above. But is there another way of framing that in a way that can give us, I guess, a more practical understanding of what we're working towards?
I think there are a couple ways to think about this, but one is that Torah, of course, comes from above. The real realization of Torah isn't unidirectional from above down to below. The full realization of Torah comes from below and goes back above. Torah Shebechtav, what we receive on Har Sinai, so to speak, the revelation from above is only one part of the equation, the written Torah, the direct revelation from God, so to speak. What comes after that, of course, is us taking that revelation and doing something with it and understanding it and teasing out all of the latent details and material and applications that are not explicit within the revelation of Torah, but are left for us to discover, uncover, even create to a certain extent as we, with fidelity and honesty and integrity, work to apply that revealed Torah to ourselves. So, the same processes are constantly repeating themselves. Everything is just a repeat of the same cycle. But on a micro level, you can say once we receive the Torah itself is this flash of inspiration from above, which then we have to work at to integrate and make real. So that ultimately, after that process of working at and developing and learning and studying and interpreting and writing and teaching and learning, then we end up with a full expression, a full realization of Torah, which is in the lived lives that we build based on it. But in order for that three-part process to unfold, there needs to be, again, an inspiration on Pesach, followed by an integration of that inspiration, a working on ourselves so that we can receive the next level of inspiration, which can then lead us to the next level of work, to the next level of inspiration, and on. So in a certain sense, we're working toward, it's the same process playing itself out between Pesach and Shavuos as plays out from after Shavuos on a cosmic level until the end of time. Really, once the Torah is received, the entire purpose of the creation was to receive the Torah. So to speak, the Zohar describes how before creating the world, God conditions creation on the Jews accepting the Torah. And when the Jews accept the Torah, God says, oh, now the world can continue. Everything until then is contingent on that. If they will accept it, if they'll take on this task, then we'll keep going. If not, we'll start all over again. Because what's the point? So really, everything is building into that process of receiving Torah and then building into it to the ultimate purpose of all creation. But in order to get there, there's a different threefold process that takes place to get us to that point. And that threefold process now mirrors the same process that's going to take place beginning Shavuos as well.
Let's move on to the mazel, because that also creates some good imagery and a model. The shore, the ox, as far as reflective of the avoda, the work that we are doing in the month of Iyar. Speak to that if you would, please.
So again, the as we've said, right, the energy of Iyar expresses itself in many, many different ways. The Sefer Yetzirah discusses always, for every single month, several ways in which the energy of that month is expressing itself. There's a letter, there's a tribe, there's a faculty of the human body, there's a part of the human body, there's, right, all of these different things. And it's always too much to fit into one podcast, but hopefully we'll have opportunities to continue this cycle and we'll continue to expand. Right. But so the mazel, the zodiac sign, the celestial sort of alignment that reflects the energy of Iyar is the shor, Taurus, right, the ox. And there's, again, this means, what this means, or the message in this is that in the ox, we can see, again, the same messages, the same sort of spiritual energy that we're seeing in the month itself. In the letter that is animated by the month, we see these same energies. So an ox has typically, right, we can, if we get down to the nitty-gritty details, we can quibble about this, but in general, right, oftentimes we associate an ox, it's a domesticated labor animal, right? That's what an ox is. And it's domesticated. In other words, it's docile. It's dependent on its owner. Yes, it's true there are wild oxen also, but in general, right, our experience is oxen have been domesticated.
But the strongest of the domesticated animals.
It is, yes, and right. That's a good point. The strongest. I'm not an animal husbandry expert, but I imagine. I think my sense is it's the hardiest in many ways of naturally occurring sort of domesticated animals, and it's also extraordinarily docile. This is again a reflection, in a certain sense, of hard work taking place within the context of humility, of dependence, of bitachon, of an understanding that the ox plows the whole field. It doesn't puff up its chest and say, look at me, I puffed up my own field, and the farmer couldn't have done this for beans, and I'm letting it lead me around. It doesn't have a problem with this. It plows the whole field and it says, and I work for the farmer, no problem.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lion to submissively plow your field for you.
Right, you're not going to, or a horse even. Right. I mean, in a certain sense, right? Horses also sort of have a mind of their own in a way that the domesticated ox doesn't, quite. And so in that sense, right, the ox represents or reflects, rather, I think, and the message to appreciate is, again, this idea of hard work and accomplishment from within the perspective of I'm just a vessel, I'm just a conduit, I'm just a vav. I'm just a pipeline for expressing the will of the master out there into the world. The farmer uses me to create. The farmer wants the field plowed. The farmer can't plow the field on its own. It's just not. God wants to be revealed in the world. God can't, so to speak, be fully revealed into the world except through a physical medium that reflect godliness, i.e. the human being. And so we just become a vehicle, like the ox. We become a vehicle for enacting the will of the master, so to speak. And we don't have a problem with that. Like the ox, we don't have a problem with that. We go ahead and we do it. And we don't experience tension between our subservience and sort of just being a reflection of the master and the accomplishments that we're accomplishing. We accomplish those accomplishments, and we're not proud in a personal sense of those accomplishments. We're proud because we've done the will of the master, so to speak. I think another interesting aspect of the ox is also that if you think about what oxen are often used for, it's for plowing. It's for readying the ground for planting, right? The farmer plants the seeds, and then the seeds grow, and then they produce. But in order to be able for the farmer to plant those seeds, the ground has to be tilled, and the furrows have to be straight and dug, and so on and so forth. And we use the ox hooked up to a plow to ready the ground to be able to receive the seed from the farmer which is then going to grow into the plants. And that the work of Iyar is exactly that. The work of Iyar is readying the ground for the receiving of the Torah. The rabbis say, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah, that before Torah can come along, there has to be humanity. There has to be a basic decency. You're a human being. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch writes about this, right? Avraham only receives the covenant from God at 99 years old, right? Why? Why does it take so long to have this special? He clearly has a special relationship with God for a long time. Why does it take 99 years for Avram to be now bound up in the covenant of the bris, right? And have this indelible, permanent relationship that Avram's children are the Jewish people, and they have this special relationship with God and a particular job to do, and so on. Why 99 years? Rabbi Hirsch says because it takes all of it, because before Avram can be a Jew, Avram has to be a human being. And human being also has a deep and intense and powerful relationship with God. God is interacting with Avram on a regular basis and talking with him all the time and so on and so forth. But there's human being development that has to happen before there can be Torah development. The rabbis say that Torah, depending on how you use it, it can either produce good things or it can produce bad things. It can be a sam chaim, it can be a sam maves. It can be a healthy medicine, or it can be poison. It all depends on what you're watering with the Torah, right? Where you put what ground you're putting the seed into, so to speak. And so it becomes important during Sefira to ready the ground. And this is why a lot of the work of Sefira is not associated with Torah and mitzvos per se. It's associated with character development, with integrity, with honesty, with the ability to hold and set boundaries, with the ability to be loving and open to with courage and perseverance, with humility, with the ability to be conceding. All of these are universal qualities, human qualities. These have nothing to do with Torah. If you gave me no Torah, I would still have all these qualities and still have to work on them. So that comes first. That's the tilling of the ground. That's readying the ground to be able to receive the Torah. If we ready the ground during Iyar, through this work of Tikkun Amidos, through this work of sort of the universal almost integration of the revelation of God that we received on Pesach, and then bring it into ourselves and sort of integrate it and work for it now, then we find ourselves people who are ready to receive a Torah in a way that the Torah will do what it needs to do, and it can accomplish what it needs to accomplish.
Wow. So in your analogy, Hashem is the farmer and the seed is the Torah?
Yeah, but it was an off-the-fly analogy, so I don't know how far you want to really take it. But yes.
I think that's true. I mean, what you're saying is true. When we're studying Pirkei Avos, we're working on the Sephiros, and we're diligently working on this every day. We're plowing the field, trying to make ourselves a suitable environment to receive Torah.
Right. Yeah, exactly so. Which once we receive it, is not supposed to just sit as a seed, right? It's supposed to then flower and grow into something much, much bigger.
I was reading about how the ox, the farmer puts a yoke on it. And one of the early things I learned, very early days of learning, was from Pirkei Avos about you can wear the yoke of Torah or the yoke of worldly affairs. And I think after coming one of the necessities of that experience in Mitzrayim of being a slave was to show us, throughout all the generations, that you're going to be a slave to something. You're going to wear a yoke of something, worldly affairs, the government, livelihood, or just wear the yoke of Torah.
Yeah, right. We were saying this before about sort of the fact that we're this human being made up of body and soul, and the body pulls us in one direction and yokes us to certain things, right? It yokes us to the insecurity of life. I'm here, and one day I'm going to die. I don't want that to happen. So what can I do? I'm compelled and I'm driven to do all the things I can do so I won't die, or I won't die sooner and I'll die later. And in the meantime, while I'm not dying, I need food, I need shelter, I need clothing, I need vacations, I need fun, I need games, I need relationships, I need all these things because I feel insecure, because if I'm alone, then I'm just going to be dead. I won't have support. I won't have and so on and so forth. And so I'm yoked to pursuing all of that. I'm yoked to pursuing those worldly things. If I lean into the body, because ultimately the body is my impermanence, and one day I'm not going to be around anymore, and I'm compelled to, how can I last, right? How can I make myself last? How can I make my time here while I'm lasting enjoyable? And because if I'm not enjoying, then I'm dying, right? Then immediately that brings up my fear of death and pain and so on and so on. And pain just reminds me of my impermanence and so on. And if I lean into the other side of things, which is my soul, that also yokes me to something. What does it yoke me to? It yokes me to the fact that I'm intimately and indelibly bound up with the divine, because my soul is a chelek elokam imal. It's a part of the divine. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck here or I'm stuck there. Which way do I want to be stuck?
There's another element to this I want you to touch on, because when I studied the text, it was over Pesach, it was mentioning how the ox knows its owner. And it was quoting from Yeshaya, from Isaiah, where I guess he was chastising the Jewish people because they forgot. They're unlike an ox who knows its owner. Right.
The Navi says, right, an ox knows its owner, but you people, you've forgotten. Right. Exactly.
So that's another element of the visualization, I think, of the mazel, of the shore, of the ox, is that we're putting on the yoke of Torah, we're plowing ground, working on our internal midos, working on the sephiros, and that we're doing this because we're plowing this for our owner.
Right, which goes back to the idea of again, the humility created through Pesach and through that experience of the unearned exodus helped, right? That I'm not doing this for me, because really there is no me to do this, and I wouldn't be doing this if it was dependent on me. It's only in the context of having that owner, having that master. And so it's all directed in that direction. If it's directed in that direction, it's a mechanism, a critical mechanism for trying to, a little bit, to the extent that we can, limit that arrogance that can come along with the work.
Right. In the deliberate, steady work of the ox and plowing the field, it really is precisely like, as I've been reading your daily emails in the Sephiros and work and really fine tuning, identifying each of these areas, it really is like that work that we're doing on the next. So every day, steadily working on one little, like today is Malchus of Gevora, right? And just So it's the same process.
Part of that also is the idea that the ox knows its master. The ox doesn't have a plan for what needs to get done. What needs to get done is what the master wants to get done, right? So just mentioning that, right? That if today, the 14th day of Sfira is the work of Malchus Shebegavura, and you can subscribe to the WhatsApp group to see what all these things are and get more insight into them. But we'll do that work today. And tomorrow we're going to do different work, and we didn't do all the work today, right? If it's about me and it's my accomplishment, and we can sit on Malchus of Gevura for a long time and keep doing it. But part of the point is that day to day we're flitting. We're from a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and then we got to move on. Why are we moving? We don't have to. It's not about us. It's not about me perfecting myself. It's about me doing what the master wants me to do. The master wants me to plow this little bit of field and then move on to that. And I look in front of me, I'm like, there's so much more to plow. I was like, yeah, but I don't need that plowed. I want this done and this done and this done. Do it my way. And that's, again, the sort of wearing the yoke and sort of saying like, yeah, I'm going to do it your way. And it doesn't become about me, and it doesn't become about the outcomes. It becomes about how good of a vav I'm being, how good of a pipeline, of a conduit that I'm being.
Right. Beautiful. Amazing. A couple other ideas that I would like you to discuss, because they play a key part here. And there were events in our history that occurred in the month of Iyar, and one was the man falling, and the other was receiving our water from the Miriam's well, which I think there's some ideas there that we can probably take with us in this month to give us a better feel of our avoda. Like the one thing that comes to mind is those took away the illusion that we're independent. Like it removed everything and showed us that you're dependent on Hashem. And from the moment we went into the land of Israel, he said, now farm the land. We're like, we don't want to do that because we're going to forget that all comes from you. It's easy to get caught up in the system. What can you share with us there that can also bring some more clarity to these ideas and what our work is this month?
So it's interesting because as you were speaking, what just popped up to me was that's another iteration of this three-step pattern of before we enter the land of Israel, right? When work the land, grow the food, build a society, right? There's first these 40 years of the desert, which are entirely dependent on the man and the well of Miriam. The water's there for us. We don't have to pull it out of the ground or desalinate it from the ocean. And the food is right there for us. We don't grow it. We don't raise it. We don't kill it. It's at our doorstep. Dependence, right? Emunah cultivated through that experience. Similar, right? It's a freebie, right? A so to speak, unearned freebie to create and generate emunah, so that when you then go do the work in the land of Israel, that work is done with an eye towards emunah. If that work is done with an eye towards emunah, you don't, as the Torah describes, you don't become arrogant within the land. You understand where your food is coming from, even while you're the one working for the food. And then what is accomplished through that? Now you usher in a new reality. Ultimately, what that would be is, Mashiach and the Messianic era of a space within which there is no difference between you're giving me the food and I'm working for the food. It's all the same thing, right? I'm living in the land of Israel, growing my food. And as I'm living in the land of Israel, working the land, growing my food, running a country, I know that everything is all just you anyway. And there's no disconnect between those. And it's the same thing playing out that we've talked about until now, which is this like flash of initial unearned inspiration in order to lay the groundwork of humility for physical labor, effort, accomplishment, so that accomplishment itself can become a vehicle for realizing that the accomplishment was never mine in the first place, or isn't mine as it's happening. So I just reflecting on that as you were talking, it occurred to me again, the same three-step parallel is playing out in that context as well. But yes, in a broader sense, right? So the Jews leave Egypt on the 15th of Nisan, and they take enough provisions to last 30 days. And then it runs out on the 15th of Iyar, and now there's nothing left. And they complain because the process of cultivating emunah is sort of an endless process, and they haven't really fully integrated the flash of unearned inspiration and revelation that happened on Pesach. So as soon as the food runs out, things are good, you coast, right? Because I haven't really integrated the realization of It's all God. God has me. No problem. We're all good. I haven't fully integrated that. So what do I do when the food runs out and things get tough? I complain. You took us out of Egypt so that we die in the desert. We're going to have no food. We're going to have no water. We'll have our graves right here in the desert. We could have had, aren't the Jews there? Aren't there enough graves in Egypt, right? That we could have died and been buried there. We have to go out here for graves. And so the response to that is the next day, there's man on the ground, right? There's man and there's water coming from this rock, from the well of Miriam, which is offered to them automatically. And again, right, it's a reinforcement of, oh, you don't trust me, right? No, you're going to trust me. Not only are you going to trust me, but I'm going to take away from you the opportunity to not trust me because you're babies still, right? You haven't done the work yet. Because you haven't done the work yet, you still have to. We need to sort of reinforce for you that this is all just me. And so the man and the well of Miriam, in a certain sense, are helping to communicate that. The man does something else that's interesting that I think relates and relates to a lot of what we're talking about in connection to Iyar, which is right that the man is a profoundly spiritual food. It's food, it's sustenance, it's food. But the character, even the physical character of the food, is sort of ethereal and otherworldly. It doesn't really have form. It doesn't really have shape. It doesn't have color. It doesn't even have defined taste. It's amorphous. It's entirely a blank slate, so to speak. It becomes whatever you want it to be. And the Medrash describes, the rabbis describe, how it's also spiritual food in the sense that it's not exactly physical. When we eat physical food, we eat food, and our bodies process the food that we eat and pull out the nutrients and calories and vitamins and all the things that our body needs from that food and can pull out of that food. And then whatever's left that our body can't do anything with or can't pull things out of becomes waste, and we expel the waste. And the Arizal and Rabbi Nachman and others talk about how this process of eating food, drawing out its nutritional energizing qualities, and then having waste left over from that food is really the process of what's called bir nitzotzos, or sort of the clarification or the drawing out of spirituality from within physicality. The thing that makes food energizing is not any inherent physical quality of the food itself. Indeed, the thing that gives us the energy and gives us life out of our food is not a physical thing exactly. It is ultimately a spiritual energy. It's the divine. It's the Ratzon Hashem within the food. It's the divine will present within the food that our bodies miraculously are able to pull out of that food and bring it into our cells and bring it into our body so that our physical body can run off of spiritual gas. It's a very fascinating thing. And so the process of eating food is a process of drawing the spiritual out of the physical in order to fuel ourselves. In a spiritual sense, primarily, right? The life force within ourselves is driven by the spiritual life, the spiritual energy within the food that we eat, among other things that we need. But what's left over after our bodies process the food is the stuff that we're not able to process. Different people are able to process different foods, right? There are people who are able to, right? If you're lactose intolerant, so your body can't pull out the nutritional qualities of the physical substance called dairy, lactose, right? My body can, other people's bodies can, but people who are lactose intolerant, they can't. Their body is not able to be mevarer that spirituality, to draw out that spirituality from that, separate the two, right? And those with other sort of intestinal, digestive problems and so on, what it really boils down to is there's things there, our bodies are unable to process that spirituality out of that physicality. Now, by and large, most of us, thank God, we're healthy and we can do that thing, right? But of course, for all of us, there is a point at which our body says, I got everything I can out of this food, and now we're getting rid of the rest because I can't get anything out of it anymore. It's not, there's nothing to draw out of it. However, that is just a reflection of the fact that our body, to the extent that it's developed and spiritually attuned, views that waste product as pure physicality. It's pure physicality. There's no spirituality left in there. There's no energy left in there for me to draw out, so we get rid of it. But when we become more refined, and the Arizal and others talk about this, and I don't really know exactly what to make of it because I don't. But when a person is sufficiently spiritually refined, and they refine and integrate their spiritual soul and their physical body in such a way, you get to a point somehow, in some way, shape, or form, again, whether really or in some metaphorical sense, where there is no waste. There is no waste. You can fully process everything in your food because every physical thing contains spiritual energy. And even the physical thing itself is spiritual energy, because at the end of the day, there's no difference between the physical and the spiritual except as a matter of true perspective. And those who have the perspective of physical and spiritual are all just the same, and God is everything and everything is God, and there's no difference between the two. So then there's no difference between the physicality and the spirituality in the food, and it doesn't matter what you're eating or how you're eating or how much you're eating. It all becomes spiritual. Mun, the rabbis say, produce no waste, right? Mun is precisely this kind of spiritual, pure spiritual, physical energy all at once wrapped into each other. It's a revelation, right? It's a revelation of this endpoint of, I understand or I appreciate that the physical food stuff is pure spirituality, and therefore there's no waste produced as a result.
There's no concealment to reveal. It's all...
Everything is revelation, right? Exactly. Everything, even concealment is revelation. Even concealment is revelation.
So, Rabbi Nachman in the book Anatomy of the Soul, this whole idea of digestive system, our bodies need proteins and carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals, but the building block of all that is the same thing, which is Hashem's energy. So, Rabbi, just to sort of wrap things up, this is very insightful, but just sort of really leave everyone with an impression of the avoda of Iyar. Of everything we said, how would you sort of summarize it and leave us with sort of a marching instructions as we move into the month?
So I'm terrible at summaries because I'm very long-winded, but I would say if we're going to boil it down to something very, very concrete, it's number one, that this is a month of working to take whatever spiritual inspiration we found in Pesach and make it real within ourselves. Not to leave it up in our heads, not even to leave it sort of as abstract or sort of this, amorphous, fluffy inspiration. Pesach was nice, but then what? But to take that and try to integrate it into ourselves, into how we're actually living in practice. Not necessarily in a Torah and mitzvos kind of way, right? This is not the time, I think, maybe I'm not supposed to say such things, but the truth is that the Arizal and Rav Chaim Vital write this explicitly, that we focus sometimes much too much on Torah and mitzvos in a technical sense without realizing that all of Torah and mitzvos is built on midos. All of Torah and mitzvos is built on character. Sphere is a time for character, to build character, to build integrity, to build honesty, to build generosity, to build a sense of self and responsibility, all of the things associated with the midos and the spheros that we work on throughout Spheros HaOmer during Iyar. And to do all of that constantly with a background sort of noise of humility, 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 humility. I'm an ox. I am just a conduit. I am doing all of this work not because I am great, accomplished, awesome, and at the end of this journey I will be something impressive, but also that as a result of doing this work, I can be more fertile ground to receive Torah and then reflect Torah back into the world in a healthy way.
That was extremely helpful, extremely insightful. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Rabbi.
Until next month.
Very good.
Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the episode and found it meaningful, please take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast.